Welcome to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, here to share some amazing conversations. We're talking business, health, making and saving money, or starting something epic. Think of this as your go-to spot for stories that do a lot more than just kill time. They spark ideas, give you a boost, and perhaps even change the way you look at the world. I'm pulling in the experts, the thinkers, the doers, and the dreamers. We're about to dive into stories that open doors and ideas that light up your brain. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Christiane Schroeter. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me here.
Excellent, and I am honored to have you on the show. I've been looking forward to our conversation, and I can't wait for the listeners to hear more. And just to share a little bit about you, Christiane, you are so accomplished. Really, you're a business and wellness coach, but in addition to that, you're a professor, a best-selling author. You teach at a top-ranked U.S. university and really are helping entrepreneurs achieve big success with strategic actions, small strategic actions. And we're going to really dive into this today, specifically your Petite Practice framework. And so I can't wait for the listeners to learn more. Christiane, would you tell us how this came to be for you? How did this path happen?
Yeah, I really love the introduction. Thank you so much. Because I think when you look at any accomplished leader, you sometimes wonder, how did they get there, right? And for me, that is really why I'm sharing the Petite Practice framework, because this is the exact framework that got me to where I am today. So to the listeners, I'm essentially giving away the best secrets of how I accomplished this and what I'm doing now in my day-to-day life as a professor, as a coach, and of course, as an author. And the beautiful thing is, you can hear from my accent that the Petite Practice framework ties in a lot with my culture. So when I teach innovation entrepreneurship, I always tell my students, my clients, you have to create something that's unique to you, that's of value to you, but that's also something that differentiates you from everybody else out there. And so the Petite Practice framework, yeah, you could call it small steps, you could call it tiny progress. I call it Petite Practice because I am from Europe and I love the French culture. So petite standing for small, and steps is really something. I am a mother and I watched my children grow up in small steps, and yet it feels like time always flies. We don't have enough of it. So that was how I named my program Petite Practice, because I always feel I'm practicing, I'm trying things, and then I'm looking back and I'm celebrating the wins and see how it turned out.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think what you said in there is so true. These small steps can lead to big wins. You know, we're watching our children, if we're blessed to have them, take these little fumbling steps until they get stronger. And when we think about ourselves taking these little steps to get to where we want to go, yeah, we'll have those fumbles and those falls, but if we get back up and keep going, we can get there, right? And so I think that's a wonderful way to look at it. So often we think we just have to be perfect in everything that we do, and we can't have any failures. Otherwise, forget it, throw the whole thing away. And so I think that this is such an important thing to remember, that we can have those little stumbles, but keep going.
Yeah, I think that really is what differentiates a great entrepreneur. The ones that keep getting up and keep going no matter what. And at the same time, of course, the Petite Practice really helps you with that, because as much as we love long to-do lists, I always emphasize, put 3 things on your to-do list, and those are the ones you're going to accomplish on that day. When you look back at the end of the day, celebrate 3 wins, and they might absolutely not even tie in with your to-do list. They could even be, I celebrate that I went for a walk today, or I celebrate that I tried a new recipe today, and that might not have even been on your to-do list. So you need to think a little bit about small things everywhere in your life. And those are really then also, if you were to fumble and struggle, like just little missteps along the way, and not like big tragic failures. While we still have those, if you take small steps forward, it is something that overall is also just another way of trying something new. Because I always say, if you didn't even try, you can't even win, right?
That's right. You're absolutely right. And that's so, so wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So let's dive into specifically the Petite Practice framework and really how does this empower female entrepreneurs or even just maybe people who are working for, a corporate job, but can use these steps in your framework to be successful in their careers?
Yeah, I love that you talk about females, you talk about entrepreneurs, because the reason why I started the framework is really because as an entrepreneur, and especially as a female, we feel the only thing that really leads us to kind of get success if we constantly push, push, push. Kind of this feeling of complete burnout is what we associate with, okay, we are nearly at the finish line. Where in reality, that's probably then an unhealthy sign that you went a little bit too far. So you might have gone past the finish line. Or maybe you looked at a finish line that was too close to where you are today, presently, and not long enough into the future. So you took a big goal and you scooshed it into a very short timeline. I think the petite practice, the magic of it really is that you're taking small steps towards your goal, but because you're taking small steps, it also allows you to course adjust along the way. Because we all have these goals in our mind, and sometimes we're even afraid as females to share those goals because we're like, I don't want to share it. I'm kind of like feeling you're going to laugh about it. It's like, who's going to laugh about it and why? So stop caring what other people think, share those goals, and then every day start working on those goals because obviously it was enough of an importance to you that you felt this is something you had on your bucket list. And then if you start working small steps at a time at those goals, it's also kind of like a personal satisfaction to where you're doing something for yourself. Because as females, we frequently put ourselves on the back burner. And that is like what we always, when we get in an airplane, we see have to put the oxygen mask on first. So if you take care of your own goal and your own little steps towards reaching those goals, you're going to notice that all other areas in your life are going to thrive even more because you feel you're doing something for yourself and getting closer to those goals.
Yeah, such a great reminder how important it is to look at the things that are important to us and, trying to accomplish those. And you're right, it's always put your own oxygen mask on before you help others because if you don't, what's going to happen, right? It's not going to be good for you. And so applying this to our own lives, it's so important to remember that when we fill ourselves up, we do things that are important for us, kind of all the other areas of our life begin to fall into place, right? Because the emphasis isn't necessarily on giving to everybody else first, so you're depleted, right? It's about achieving the things that you want to achieve while also doing the other things as well. And so let's talk about how these small, consistent changes can really lead to the big results over time.
Yeah, think a little bit about money, right? So finances. As females, this is something that I like to bring up because it's sometimes uncomfortable to us. Essentially, the pity practice is like a compounding interest, but instead of accumulating money, you're accumulating confidence and accumulating growth. So every little step will make you more confident with what you're uniquely sharing with the world and what your superpower is. So one of my books is called Discover Your Superpower. And in the book, we're taking petite practices to discover the superpower. In essence, really, the more you share little steps with the world, the more you're intentionally putting yourself out there. Because I could tell you right now, oh, deliver a 45-minute keynote talk. And like, no, are you crazy? I'm not going to do that. But maybe a petite practice to get to this 45-minute keynote talk could be, let's maybe have a 5-minute Instagram Live, or maybe a 3-minute YouTube short, anything like that, where you're maybe even pre-recording it and then you're sharing it. And over time, the PT practices of these small video clips will accumulate to that 45-minute keynote talk. So you are compounding your interest with regard to your confidence and your growth.
Yeah, that's excellent examples for sure on how we can build up our confidence by doing these smaller activities to get us to that point. And that's such a great reminder that we don't have to go from 0 to 100, right? We don't have to jump to that 45-minute speech, like you said. We can start with something small that feels more manageable and achievable for where we're at right now. And I think that's so important and really can build our confidence in getting us to that point where we can get on stage and speak for 45 minutes or whatever the case is for the person listening for their goal that they're trying to accomplish. I love it. And so you talk about the most common challenges that female entrepreneurs and women face in overcoming these obstacles. So what do you want to share with the listeners on that?
I think it's just one word, confidence. It's the most common challenge. And that confidence is really something that it happens from, maybe two factors. One would be you're looking at everybody else out there. And I mean, particularly in psychology, you typically look up, you typically compare up. Upward comparisons means that you feel you're less just by, like if you think about a step ladder, you're looking at people that have more followers, they have more clicks, they have more likes. They do deliver that 45-minute talk and it looks oh so easy. And here you are, you can't even give a 5-minute talk. And just by the nature of it, because you're looking up, you're down and you feel inferior. And unfortunately, in psychology, because you are comparing to yourself to those people, what you don't do is you don't look down at those people and how they got started. They weren't always delivering 5-minute, 45-minute keynote talks. They weren't always having that many followers. If you actually look down, maybe in how they got started, there might have been where you were, or maybe, of course, even less, because we all start with 0 followers, with 0 keynote talks. And with everything is essentially a plain level field, everybody starts with that. And so because we don't do that downward comparison often enough, we feel like, well, how can I even get there? It's all overwhelming. I don't have the confidence to do it. Where in reality, upward comparison is actually just your future self letting you know you can do this too. So it's like a sign from the future. Because you could sit down today and write yourself a letter, kind of like, where were you 5 years ago? And probably at a very different spot, right? And you could say, oh my gosh, like I would tell myself 5 years ago, you just have to relax. It's not all about numbers. It's more about relationships. It's about building community, etc. And so just by looking back and how far you've come, you can already celebrate your own wins. But the confidence really just comes from thinking about all these people that are in these upward comparisons. They are just for you an inspiration that you can do it too. And they just basically pave the way that you can get there too. So they did the hard work. And all what you can do is you can see how they got there. And then you can do it too. Everybody can do this. And so them reaching this is essentially just a high five to you. You can do it. Yeah, you can. You just have to go step by step, the Petite Practice way.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much for detailing that for us. And I feel like I've had this conversation similar on many podcast episodes talking about this upward comparison, like you just said. We look at these people who are at the pinnacle of their career and think like, we need to be there, or, I can't get started unless I'm as good as they are. And really, they didn't start there. They started, like you said, where you're at, or maybe even less than where you were at. Many people have struggles that we don't have any idea, and they've had to overcome those just to even get to what might be your baseline, let alone to where they are. But I think it's such a great reminder, what you shared about they are where you can be in the future. It's like they've paved the way. And I love that idea. Follow in footsteps that were set before you. And just knowing that it's possible for you too, because they've accomplished it. It's like it reminded me of before people could run a mile in, I don't know, whatever it was, 3 minutes or some short distance until somebody accomplished it. Nobody thought it was possible. But as soon as one guy did, everybody started beating it. So this is the example, right? When we see other people accomplishing it, it shows we can do it too.
I love that comparison with the running because especially in sports, times and metrics matter so much. And for us, sometimes as business coaches, we think it is all a lot about the metrics. I think when you really look at metrics, and that's why I'm emphasizing Petite Practice framework so much, it is truly something about just keeping up some type of intentional, repetitive growth pattern. Because I think that's really the main metric that matters when you think, okay, so how many days this week did I do something for the business? And how many days this week did I do something for myself? That when you look at your calendar, does it look like you are taking care of your business? And does it look like you also have some metrics, some time scheduled for yourself? Because if you emphasize one area too much, if you think about this as a Venn diagram, that metric is going to maybe thrive, but it's going to be at the sacrifice of your health. And especially as females, sometimes the most accomplished females that go from one title to the next promotion are the ones that are truly not happy because it's not about the metrics always. It is also something about how we feel deep inside. And Petite Practice allows you, you can take small steps in your business, but you can also take small steps in your wellness during the day so that you're feeling it's a little bit of like a nurture and growth sequence. Not every step needs to be actually business related. It could even be that maybe your Petite Practice is going towards, I want to take a vacation in 6 months. And let's maybe figure out the planning. Every day I'm going to plan a little something for that vacation. So it's essential that you also weave those little times into your day where you're taking care of yourself.
That is such a great reminder. It's so easy for us to get focused because we want to achieve a goal that we spend all of our time doing that, and then everything becomes lopsided, right? It's out of balance because we're spending so much time focusing on just one area and not really taking a look at the broader, picture of what's happening in your life. So I think that's such a great reminder for us to not focus so much on just one aspect. We are whole beings. We need to look at all parts of, our health, our well-being, and our success in business, right?
Yeah, and what I like too is, of course, if you are a female, how you can be a role model to other females, whether that's your family, whether that's your friends, whether those are peers, because you might be juggling multiple hats. And the goal then really is that you learn how to create those boundaries, that you can focus intentionally on your family, intentionally on your profession, but also intentionally on yourself. Because only that's what's in control. You can control how you show up for the world, and you can show up much more intentional and much more full if you're actually really taking care of yourself. Everything else is just essentially like they are mirroring on how you're showing up. Your children are going to see how you eat healthy, and they're going to see how you work out and how much sleep you get. And that's just a mirror. When they act in a certain way, it's because you were the role model to them and you were maybe showcasing certain behaviors. And I think that's important for us to keep in mind that if you don't take care of yourself, it's not just you that's going to suffer, but everybody else that's looking at you around you that's getting impacted by this as well. Your whole network, it's like you're kind of like digging against that network. And yeah, you're going to feel this.
Yeah, and you made such a good point in there. We often have to wear so many different hats, right? And you as well. As a professor, a coach, a speaker, an author, you are wearing so many hats. And as women, we really do have a lot of hats. And so let's talk about how we can really begin to balance that. So I know you shared how important it is that we are, filling ourselves up, we're taking care of ourselves because others are seeing what we're doing. But how can we balance it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing for me that really changed was when I started to really, I started to really cut down on certain things in my life, and then my health went down. And I realized, okay, so what's leading to this downward spiral is I'm saying yes to too many things. So I felt a little bit like a sponge that was thrown like into this jar of water, and I just soaked it up all the way. And I was just like full of, all these obligations that I had. When reality, what I should have done is, you throw a sponge in water. I should have created some kind of boundary around me so that I can soak up what's really essential to me. And at the same time, say no to some other things that maybe somebody else could take over. And now this is really important. We don't like to say no. You need to kind of like write down maybe 3 very polite ways of saying no. And I mentioned earlier the confidence, and the confidence is a muscle that you need to train, just like public speaking or writing a book or anything like that. Saying no is also a muscle you need to train. And figuring out how you can say no, it's very hard at the beginning. It will get easier. And please do not worry what everybody else is thinking, because it doesn't matter, right? What they think. If you say it in a certain way and they don't understand it, that is on them. But you communicated your needs, and that's all what you can do. So don't feel bad in saying no, because it just means that you're prioritizing those other things that are on your plate. Because we talked about the hats, right? I'd say you have 25 different hats you want to wear. I mean, that's immense amount of stuff you want to do. Maybe it's 5 things. And those 5, you really enjoy each one of those, because you realize that 20 of those hats, they were just kind of like you were doing it because you felt bad and nobody else seemed to be stepping up. But in reality, it was just another thing. So you need to look a little bit at like, what are the 5 most important things that I can really do in my day without sacrificing everything else. And then everything else just has to go. And I had to do that too. Did some people not like that? For sure. Or were there some things that I had to let go that might be great, etc.? Always. But you know what? I mean, at the end of the day, we only have that one life. And you have to think a little bit. It's like, what is it today that you're doing with your one amazing life? Maybe not wearing 25 hats. That was my solution.
That's so fantastic. Thank you for sharing that visual. I love that idea of the sponge. And if you don't have boundaries, you're just going to be, trying to suck up everything, and to the point where you're just overwhelmed and exhausted. And so I love that idea of setting those boundaries, writing down some polite ways to say no so that you've got an easy reference that you can call on when people are asking you to do things that just maybe aren't the priority for you right now. So great stuff, great suggestions. Thank you for that. So let's talk a little bit about, you've got 2 books out, and one of them is How to Master Your Goals, which debuted as #1 on Amazon in the adult education. And so I'd love to hear more about this. It's inspired so many people. What can the listeners learn from this, and what would they discover if they were to pick up the book?
They would discover it's not a book like any other book they might have maybe picked up, just by the fact when you order it, it has the size of a laptop. So it's a workbook, and it is packed with worksheets. And now I'm using this name work, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's work in there. But it's a sheet. It's 1-page worksheets. So it is a collection of worksheets that allows you to apply the Petite Practice concept to master your goals. And it is also fun, of course. I am an educator. I've had more than 10,000 students that I've taught in my life. And I know that there is one thing that we all deep down, whether I'm teaching a middle school student, a high school student, a college student, or a business owner, we all deep down love games, and we all love diversifying our learning journey. And that's how I built the book, right? So there are word searches in there. Of course, the words that you're searching in the word search are all from the chapter. So you kind of like feel you're searching for little nuggets that you just figured out. Oh, niche. Niche. Now I'm searching for the word niche in this word search right here, or unique value proposition. What is that? So I have definition pages. I have word searches in there. I have, of course, little quizzes that are also helping you discover your own character. And those are super fun because we always want to learn something about ourselves. And then, of course, the worksheets are super fun and intentional because you can actually take your pencil and write in it. So I'm a firm believer that there's a connection between the mind and the hand. And while I love electronic concepts, I also think that there is nothing else that beats really sitting down and writing it yourself. Because then you have all of your plans, all of your goals in one spot, so to speak. And it is a beautiful book. So it is nice and colorful in the French colors, a la a Petite Practice, so to speak. And just a joy to pick up and open and look at your journey and how you're going through it. Now, the electronic piece comes in because there's a planner and there's also a digital planner that allows you to tick off whenever you accomplished a Petite Practice. So you can essentially look at this Google Sheet as something that somebody gives you a high five. You tick it off with what you accomplished today, your Petite Practice. And then you see over time, it gives you little smiley faces. It lets you know, oh, you are on a winning streak. So it's a little bit like your accountability is reflected right there in this beautiful planner. It is called the Petite Practice Planner. And you can set it up in a way that works for you and your schedule. And that is, of course, something that I feel is very unique because sometimes we enroll in a course and we're feeling, oh, I'm always behind. But one page worksheet, if you do one per day or you do one per week, you can tick it off in your own progress and you're still feeling you're getting ahead.
That sounds amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I love the idea of the physical aspect of writing things out. I absolutely agree that connection is so important. And really, what is it that we think we're going to remember something that we hear and don't write it down? And how quickly do we forget? And so when we're writing these things down, it really does embed in our brain a little bit deeper, right? So what a great concept. And that you've got the electronic aspect to it as well. And so fun. And so I love that there's like games that tie it all together and the electronic side of it. So you're kind of getting the best of all worlds. Good stuff. And I know you've got a new book now, and this is the Discover Your Superpower. You mentioned it earlier in the episode. It sounds so fun and exciting. So share a little bit with us on what that's about.
So the Discover Your Superpower book, I have to share, and at the beginning, I shared with the audience, I would share some secrets here. That was really something that was always my goal. And so the How to Master Your Goals book, in a certain way, was my goal of eventually writing the Discover Your Superpower book. I have a podcast that's called Happy Healthy Hustle, and it's ranked in the top 1%. And one of the things in my podcast is that I meet all these amazing guests. And it's beautiful because you're talking with somebody across the world. They're sharing their superpower. That's one of the questions on my podcast with the audience. But then when the recording is done, you're probably not going to see this person again. And I've actually never met any of the guests of my podcast in person. Well, maybe two of them, right? So I thought I need to create a book that has a collection of all what my guests have shared their superpower is, so that others can not only listen to the podcast, but they can also read it and they can also reflect on it. So it is a true podcast workbook that allows everybody to kind of see over the past 2 years, my podcast just turned 2, who has been on the podcast. And they can look at the episodes on YouTube. They can listen to the episode on all podcast players. And then the worksheets will guide them through that. All right, so here you just listen to Lisa sharing her superpower. What is in this episode that really resonated with you? And then, of course, I structured the podcast episodes. So it's a 3 key concept that I used: a podcast. Then I also have a personal quiz that allows you to discover something about yourself. And then there are also power word searches, again, like picking up on concepts. Now, when I wrote the book, I thought about a tree and the roots of the tree really nourishing the tree, and how a tree is frequently in our business something that we want to grow really strong roots to then really see we are thriving. And so for me, that was so important when I wrote the book, when I broke it up, that I teach concepts, but I also let others speak that have nourished their trees, because it might be there is some fruit that you're collecting there and some knowledge you're getting here. And so at the end, I thought of this like being like a big potluck where we're bringing all these different pieces of information together and we're learning something from all these amazing experts. and maybe even building community with them, because of course their information is right there and you can reach out and see where they are today and how their lives have transformed since the recording of my episode with them.
That sounds so fantastic. I love that idea of taking what you're sharing on the podcast and really developing it so that the listeners or the people who discover your book can dig into the concepts more and really learn more about themselves. And so that's beautiful. And so, would you want to share a little bit more about the show? Is it a weekly recording and you have guests on every episode, or how does that work?
Yeah, so my show, Happy Healthy Hustle, is a Petite Practice podcast. So all episodes are less than 30 minutes. And it is really that intersection between business and mindset that I focus on. So I release it twice per month on Fridays, typically as we move into the weekend. And it is under 30 minutes, so you can listen to it whether you are going from work home or you're going to some social event or maybe the pickups that you do with your children. But it is truly something you can listen on the go, which is why the name Happy Healthy Hustle. So I want that you don't associate the name hustle with just something that sounds negative and you're just overwhelmed, but rather, how can we stay happy and healthy while you're still thriving in your business? So the experts usually come in there every other episode and they share something about their journeys and where they are today and what really made them unique. Because I think deep down, we sometimes really figure out what is our superpower, what's really special about us. But looking back, at your life, that's what we all want to leave. We all want to leave legacy. So the sooner you figure out what your superpower is, the more you can use that superpower in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, that's excellent. I love that. And I'll include the details in the show notes so the listeners can easily find your show. I absolutely encourage listeners to check out other podcasts because we can learn from everyone, right? And having you as a star guest, I mean, you have a PhD in health economics, you've got amazing guests on, so we can learn from each other. And I love that you're giving people an opportunity to learn from so many different amazing people. So thank you for sharing that. Is there anything at this point, Christiana, that you want to share with the listeners that you maybe haven't said to this point in our conversation that you really think that they should know? What would it be?
Well, I think that community is one of the most important things. And I kept on touching on it in terms of when I talked about my podcast, the people that I meet on my podcast. But I also really want to emphasize that whether you meet somebody just once or you maybe work with them in a professional relationship. So some of those podcast guests I also work with professionally in my coaching as my clients. And of course, that's something, if you are curious about exploring maybe how it can help you discover your superpower, master your goals, I would encourage you to reach out. It is an application process. So as I created earlier, the application really makes sure we are a great fit and I can help you discover your goals. But I've worked with tons of clients who have transformed their lives, and I'm always happy to have just a 30-minute conversation and see where you are and maybe even figure out how I can help you in one way or another. If not, just have maybe a virtual coffee together. And I
Mhm.
think that's something when you listen to these podcasts, whether that's my podcast or the podcast here, also think of each of those guests as being somebody you might connect with. And that person maybe has something that can help you or you can share with that person. And that person might be community. It's always an opportunity. And especially given that most podcasts are free to listen to, it's nearly like you're building a friendship circle with amazing guests, and you can follow up on some of the information that you listen to.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I so agree with you. I think this is an opportunity when you're listening to these podcasts to get really a free education. You're learning so much from so many amazing people, and you can connect with these guests through their social media or website or whatever. And so you can learn and connect and be part of, a bigger group. And so I think it's so important for us, right, to be in connection and community with others. It's really, that's what we're designed to be, right? As humans, to be in community. And so it's so important. So thank you for that. Oh my gosh, this conversation has been so fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we close out, I love to have my guests share if there is books or podcasts that they would like to suggest that the listeners check out that have been helpful or beneficial. What would you like to share?
Well, I would love the audience check out my free quiz, the Discover Your Superpower quiz. It gives you a score at the end of your superpower. And because I am a professor and coach, of course, you get a cute little email with my favorite tips that will help you tap to a little bit deeper in your superpower. And in the show notes, you will find the link to this quiz, of course. Some books that I recommend is if you actually pick up one of my books, there are resource sections in each of the books, and those are my favorite books, but then I also have some favorite tools. And on my website, as well as on my blog, you can find some of those books and tools as well. And I never recommend something I personally don't use. I always think that I have to share my little wins. And it took me a while sometimes to find tools, and I research, and eventually I find something that works. And I'm really excited to share that because I don't want to save you the time and going through the same learning process. So what am I reading right now is I like to read a lot of business books. I read about a book per week, right? And I think that's something that sounds really intimidating, but then keep in mind, I listen in the Petite Practice way. So I might just listen 15 minutes at a time, maybe 3 times per day. And there we have 45 minutes right there. So I think it's not always that you have to pick up a book and you have to physically read it. You can also listen to them because it allows you to maybe speed up talking, or you can clip and then you can come back to it if you really like listening to it again. And I encourage the audience really in checking out. I have a tool that I created that allows you to calculate if you want to read a certain number of books per year, how many pages do you need to read per day? So I am deep down a PhD, and I think if you like metrics, read a certain number per pages of a book per day, per week, per month. It allows you to really then look back and think, wow, I read 50 books this year. It's a lot. So I would encourage you to check that out too.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I for sure will include the details to your website and the resources that you've mentioned so the listeners can find it. And, as you just shared, really, how many pages can you read per day? How many pages can you read per week? These little petite practice steps will get you to reading 10, 20, 30, 50 books in a year. You just kind of have to break it down into those little steps that are manageable for you and what you're doing in your life. And so again, it just speaks to how really anything is possible for you when you break it down into those manageable steps. So good stuff. So is there, besides your website, which I'll detail in the notes, are you on any other social media that you'd like to share so listeners can follow along with the work that you do and, reach out to you if they have questions?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Dr. Christiane, Dr.Christiane. And I'm smiling right now because I'm on YouTube and I actually share some of my finds on YouTube. There's a famous series that I started. It's called My Top 25 in 2025 series. So the top 25 products that I would recommend for the year 2025. And you can also find that series on my Amazon storefront. So the products that I recommend are always the ones that, because I'm an economist, right? They are giving you the most bang for the buck of what you're really looking for, whether that's wellness, whether that's business related, or whether that's just a fun thing to do. And so, yeah, check out Instagram. The same for YouTube. It's Dr.Christiane. And then my storefront is also Dr. Christiane. And of course, as always, if you ever feel like there's something that you can't find me, my email is info@drchristiane.com.
Perfect. I will include the details in the show notes. Again, thank you so much, Christiane, for being on the show and sharing this amazing knowledge with me and the listeners. It's been fantastic. I so appreciate your time and all of this information. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's been wonderful, and we'll talk more soon. Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. We appreciate your time and curiosity as we explore fascinating topics together. If If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to join us next week for another amazing episode. Remember, your journey of learning and growth is a continuous adventure, and we're thrilled to be part of it. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next week, stay curious and keep exploring those pockets of knowledge.